intersectional arts and healing space that believes in art as a way to connect, reflect, and imagine a more just and tender way of being with ourselves and with each other in community. We're honored to hold space for Stephanie Brown and her work and to be sitting here to hear more about it. So welcome. We are celebrating the opening of Light and Love, Contours of Self. Work by Stephanie Brown, as I said, curated by Jessica Bethel. Woo! I'll leave it to our wonderful moderator, Taylor, and Stephanie to get into it, to get into the themes of the work. I will say, though, that you should really take your time with these large-scale works to really, after the talk, sit with it, look at it. It's powerful work, and it's really nice to see. We don't often get the chance to see such large prints like this in such an intimate setting. Also spend time, please, in our heart space, which is this room, to take in Stephanie's poetic words and engage in an invitation for self-discovery that we have there. I also want to point out, mark your calendars, we will be having curatorial walkthroughs this month and next. So on January 24th, we'll have a walkthrough from 2 to 4, and then on the 25th from 1 to 3, and then again January 31st from 1 to 3, and then our closing night will be a special curatorial walkthrough again with Jessica from 6:30 to 8:30, and that'll be February 12th. You can see all of the dates on our website, but just keep that in mind. It'll be a really special, again, intimate time to be with Jessica and to really hear about the work. So with that, I'm gonna leave it to Taylor, Bythewood-Porter, and Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here tonight. I'm really honored to be in conversation with you, Stephanie, and really glad to gather in this space around light and love, contours of self. Again, I think just being in this space, what immediately struck me is how the work invites the kind of slower looking. You know, the bodies here aren't presented in spectacle, but really shaped through light, texture, and care. And tonight I'm really hoping to have a conversation that feels like an extension of this exhibition, just really reflective, intimate, and grounded in feeling. So, Stephanie, I want to start with light, not just as a formal element, but as a language that really runs through the entire exhibition. These photographs don't present the body in full view. Instead, light grazes the skin, it interrupts it, it sculpts it, like in ancestral grace or in legs. The body feels especially held by shadow. The body becomes something felt rather than fully known. So my first question to you is, do you think of light here as revealing, as protecting, or perhaps both?
Beautifully framed question. Light for me, it is both. I'm really passionate about the way that light can both reveal and conceal. And I think there's an inherent metaphor there with the way that we regard ourselves, but also with the way that we regard others. So for me, I truly feel like a sculptor. I feel like it's like I've got my engineering hat on, but I'm photographing, and I'm utilizing minimal light sources specifically to have that interaction, so that the body literally becomes the element that interferes and blocks. A lot of the shadows that are casted and created are just from another part of the body, interacting with that same life source again. So for me, it's that metaphor that really leans into both aspects of revealing and concealing.
Thank you so much. I want to kind of stay on that a little bit more because something that when we had our conversation before this, something that you said to me really stuck with me. You described light as something, again, that you kind of associate with spirit and source. And I think my kind of follow-up question for you with that is, what does light allow you to say about the body that words can't?
For me, light is a reflection of source energy. It's that essence, it's that miracle, it's that magic, it's those tiny moments. You know, film actually, like movies bring that to us all the time. You think of that like quintessential early morning, you know, like laying in bed, and like just the way the light moves and feels, like that feeling you get from light. And I've spent several years learning how to hone that, not just in studio, but also outdoors as well. And for me, harnessing that and leveraging that, it's like I'm in communion with spirit. It's like we then work together to like conjure these forms and shapes. So that's why it feels like source energy. It feels like it would only make sense that source energy and light are the things that are highlighting the parts of us that don't get the light of day, quite literally, you know, but are worthy of it. And how can we shift perspectives and narratives when we provide those opportunities to bring them to light and bring them to a space that allows them to be monumentalized, you know, and honored and cherished in a way that, you know, like, that's beautiful, so why was I hiding that again?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think building on what you just said, it really just keeps me kind of returning to when I'm looking at this body of work, you know, the bodies appear in parts, right?
Yeah.
You know, torsos, limbs, curves, never really fragmented in like a violent way, but really held with care. I really appreciate that. Especially when I look at works like Fortify or even Portal, I just keep thinking about the texture. You know, we're seeing stretch marks, we're seeing skin, we're seeing, you know, surfaces become point of recognition. And for me, as I look around, I have moments of like, I know that body.
Yeah.
And I guess my question for you is, why was it important for you to center these kind of so-called unconventional parts?
I think this is where like a good shout out to Edward Weston might be. Because in like my training, like in school, seeing black and white photographs of mundane objects, what we would call mundane objects, but they're mundane, but then you're like falling into the curves and the elements of like, that's a bell pepper, that's a conch shell, that's a flower, like, you know, all of these almost random objects, but it's the way that it's photographed, the way that that's just transformed. To me, that was a challenge. And for those that know me, I like rigor. I've always really been into rigor. I love a good challenge, and I love to be, I love to take those opportunities to almost prove you wrong. But instead of it being like, see, I told you so, it's like, well, let me just show you another perspective, you know? And so the way that I compose my images are really intentional. I appreciate the language that you use, because I do feel like I take tremendous care. Like I feel so much responsibility for the people who allow me the privilege to photograph them in this capacity and in this way, and who trust my vision and trust my hands, trust my eyes to deliver in something that they don't necessarily even have an expectation of, but they know that it's going somewhere and that there's impact there. And to me, that's the key and the elements of representation. So it was very important to me even in college, where I actually started photographing men first.
Okay.
I actually didn't start photographing women until much later, which was interesting. And again, it was like a challenge because like I knew the female form, I have one. But how do I do that with a form that's like foreign to me? So those were different ways that I just kind of continued to challenge myself. And it's important that this show and this body of work, which I do consider my most intuitive work, I do consider like the longest body of work that I've worked on, it's important that I started with its focus on Black female bodies for that reason. Because I feel like that's where, through the trajectory of my work, that was like my full circle moment. The way that I photograph bodies in the human form in a general sense hits a little bit different when I can get into the themes around Black female bodies as well.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, something that I'm hearing you say too is how you're thinking of yourself as a sculptor,
Yes.
and especially within this body of work. So I think my kind of like follow-up question for that is, what does it mean for you to offer the body as a sculpture, as like something sculptural rather than a narrative?
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so immediately your question made me think of like when you go to places like the Louvre, right? Or like when you see sculptures in these very historical places, whether it's Roman, Greek, all of that. Again, like the lack of representation.
Yeah.
Looking through those lessons and those history books and touring those spaces, I'm not seeing elements that look like me. And I think, again, that just, it reveals a gap, and it's a gap that I want to fill. It's a gap that I want to contribute to. And there's so many other artists who contribute to those gaps, and it just, shows how much it's needed. And that's an important element for me to support and bring to the table. I think sculpture it's fun because it's tangible, and these aren't tangible.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's right. And I think that's what's the fun of it is I think that's a future show. It's like I need to see my photography in alignment with some sculptures, right? And I think that would be really cool to see them in conversation with each other. But yeah, they feel tangible, they feel sculptural. And because of that, they feel abstract, even though technically, in some aspects they're not. They're more figurative, but the way that they're photographed provide us those opportunities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And even still, as you're mentioning, this kind of like expansion of something more physical as well alongside your photography. I want to turn to the poems.
Okay.
And the sensory elements of the exhibition. So, one poem was on the wall, another in your voice. The audience is invited not to just observe, but to participate, to write, to linger. The phrase, "I dare you to love yourself out loud," becomes an invitation for people to physically respond to. What does sweetness symbolize for you in that moment?
I think sweetness is the care that we have for ourselves. It's the care that we want to have for ourselves. I think sweetness is the care that we often very easily extend to others and not often enough extend to ourselves in the same magnitude often. And that's the invitation. The invitation is to, what does it mean to apply that sweetness to yourself? And I feel like even in incremental ways, that sets the stage for you to continue to do that, and to do that in other spaces, and to do that with more people or more often, and for yourself more often. And for me, if this interaction, if the work that you see, if this invitation even allows you to appreciate yourself and your own body, like the tiniest of a rice grain more, then to me, like, that's a job well done. It's an invitation for you to see yourself and honor yourself, and to allow other people to bear witness to that by sharing your writing. For me, my poetry for a long time was separate from my artistic practice. It was just something that, like, I didn't even claim writing, and I would have such a hard time writing artist statements or like descriptions of the work. But if I was like, okay, well, could you write a poem about the work? Oh yeah, absolutely. So then I was like, okay, so why am I separating these things? So if you look on my website, oftentimes the description for the work is some type of poem or creative writing element. It's been my way of talking about the work, getting out of like academic speak, getting out of like, you know, what does the people want to hear? And then I just kind of needed to own, like, okay, girl, you a writer. Like, you can own that, that's okay. But what does that mean? And what I think what writing has done for me, my prompts, I invite other people to discover that for themselves. Whether you are a writer or not, it's more so about manifesting that sweetness for yourself publicly. And when you do that publicly, there's an accountability, even if it's with a stranger. It's like, oh, I saw you write that. Yeah, I agree, you know?
No, absolutely. I feel like with that, there's like an accountability, but then also a vulnerability. Yeah, that's like something that I'm holding into my heart as well. You know, I feel that as a curator, as a writer, when you're creating these works, sometimes it's internal, it's in your head, and then when you share them with the world, or even if you speak the words out loud.
Now it's real.
Yeah, now it's real. And it's almost,
they know.
Like, oh, yeah, it's this, please don't look, don't, you know. Don't pay attention to the person behind the curtain. Even still, as I'm thinking about like your models and the work that you're doing with them, again, very intimate, but there's a vulnerability there. Yeah. My question is, how do you think about vulnerability and care, especially when you're inviting public participation?
So the fun fact is that most of the people that I photograph, it's their first time ever posing naked. And 98% of the people I photograph are regular people, like no history of modeling or anything like that. You know, it's fun to work with a dancer every now and again. They can do less things. But most of the people that you see, they're just everyday people. And my public calls are important because I like to say I'm inviting people who are looking for themselves. That's really what the call is. And it wasn't until maybe a few years in that I started to actually identify the performance. Mm-hmm. Not that it's performative, but the level of interaction that I have with the people that I photograph is what allows me to achieve what I achieve in studio, I believe. So it's not like I have this call and then they email me and then we're in the studio next weekend. It's like, well, no, I'm having a phone call with them. I send them a little survey. I'm asking them questions about themselves, where they are, why did they volunteer themselves for this thing in the first place? And I'm taking all of that information with me into the studio. I feel like I need to arm myself with this information, and that's what helps me take such great care. So I'm aware that, you know, this person that I'm photographing, they know that they're about to embark in motherhood and their body's not going to look like that anymore. Where this other person I'm photographing is now just arriving to loving their body after like 3 babies, you know, and now, you know, they're reaching where they are. Or someone else that I photographed who said, you know, I just want to feel confident, and when I look at your work, those people look confident. And I want to see myself in that light. And that's when I'm just like, okay, wait, was originally like focused on these end images, but the relationship building and the impact that I have with even just the people who say yes to modeling for me, just out of pure curiosity. I mean, we don't got a budget, so I'm not paying models. I gift them with prints, you know. But it's very heartwarming for me as well to see the gratitude and love in their eyes, just having had me bear witness to them, and seeing them bear witness to themselves in a new way. Because every time they look at the photos and like they almost don't even recognize themselves. And not in a like, who's that, but in a, ooh, who's that?
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's the tone matters, because that's the shift. That's the shift. It's like, well, why are you photographing that? And then they see the image and they're like, oh, I see what's there. Okay.
No, yeah, you can definitely feel that as well. Like I'm scanning always, like, oh yeah. I kind of want to sign up to be that.
It's on my website.
Okay,
Commissions are open.
I will talk to you later. So before we kind of like open it up for questions, I want to kind of like end with the idea of becoming.
Yeah.
There's just such a tenderness and support surrender that I think that one's one of my, they're all my favorites, but that one's definitely one of my for sure favorites because it just feels different than the others. I don't know, maybe it's just like the pose or the positioning that she took. And just in general, I feel like this exhibition really feels like a declaration, feels less like a declaration and more like a practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something kind of ongoing, unfinished and really deeply human. I have a couple of closing questions. But one is, you've talked about photography, installation, writing, and sometimes I feel like those are often separated by audiences, as you mentioned, but for you, they're just really part of this kind of same inquiry. My question is, how do you think about fluidity in your practice across mediums? Because you do so much.
Yeah. Appreciate that. My practice, to Taylor's point, is often segmented based on audiences, but to me, it's all underneath the same umbrella. I am very dedicated and passionate to understanding how people construct their identities. I'm very passionate about especially understanding how people of African descent construct their identities on top of all of the things. And for me, I enjoy investigating that through creative writing, through photography, through interactive installation. And it's an honor and a privilege to be able to blend and move through those spaces. And I invite as many opportunities as possible where I can overlap those experiences all the time. So for me, they're all aspects of my art practice, but they're all underneath the same thing. I don't have a different artist statement when I'm a writer versus when I'm doing installation versus when I'm doing photography. It's the same artist statement because I'm the same me doing the same inquiry. And it's beautiful to see where I am now, like 12 years into this practice. Because I started shooting like this.
Yeah.
And I've done so much more since I started with only photography. Like that's my bones. A lot of people have sketchbooks and things. Like that's me in the camera. That is my underdrawing. That is my draft. That is where everything always begins. And now it doesn't always end with the photograph. And now that I've been able to essentially liberate my art practice is what happened. I allowed my art practice to become expansive and truly just evolve however it needed to. And I love seeing the growth of this body of work in particular because it's only been additive. All of the other mediums that I've been able to work in and all the other experiences that I've been able to have only added to this body of work. It is the longest body of work that I've worked on. It is a body of work that I don't ever really foresee an end to, because it truly is an inquiry. It's a seeing, it's a discovery. Every new person I get to photograph just adds to that discovery, adds to that representation, adds to the larger stories that are left untold. And to me, like, you know, this will be a book series one day. that's what that'll be.
No, I love that. Okay, so with this book series, I guess my official last question. How are you imagining people carry this exhibition with them beyond the gallery?
My hope is that the work that you see here today allows you to call into question elements about yourself. Think about the things that, my hope is that you'll think about the parts of you that you would maybe say never let someone photograph. And I think the interesting thing is, are you curious enough about what would happen if something could change your mind? And if a photograph on the wall could do that, then the same could be true for yourself, with or without the photo, you know. That's just a bonus. But at the end of the day, it is self-discovery. It is taking a beat and taking a moment to see yourself in the same way that other people are being seen, because you're worthy of being seen. So at what point in time are you going to allow yourself? So this work, this experience, this exhibit is just an invitation to allow yourself to be seen in the same way and vulnerability that these people have allowed themselves to be seen. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to get in front of the camera naked. But that could mean, you know, leaving a little love note on the wall, you know, in the room next door. That could be being kinder to yourself. That could be extending grace to yourself. That could be maybe not wanting to alter and shift as much. Like, well, what happens if I just let this rock? You know, this thing that I just naturally do or naturally have. What happens when I just let that rock?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
So we will open it up. We'll open it up for questions, and I invite all of you to ask from a place of curiosity and care.
Do you have a favorite style of photography?
A favorite style of photography. So technically, the style of photography that I shoot in is called chiaroscuro, which is traditionally used in painting. So if you Google that, you'll probably get a lot of paintings, but it is just an art style, and it's essentially these like the high contrast elements that you see in the work. You know, the photographs are mostly black; it's mostly shadow, and that's something that you'll see in chiaroscuro. So that's my favorite. I love a good mystery. You know, when you're not really sure of what you're looking at. Especially in this day and age when like we're scrolling through thousands of photographs like and pictures all the time on our phones. So I love a good mystery and a good challenge and a good opportunity of like discovery, and just it's that little head nod. Like when I see you all walking around, it's like, huh. I'm just like, yes, you've lingered, and that's what matters. You know, like the gears are turning. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
I have two process questions. The first one, like in stage or cinema, a director is going to come up with the tableau and blocking. So do you come in with a vision of the shape that you're wanting somebody to pose in, or do you think about that after they do the questionnaires and things like that? Like, are you trying to already have something, or do you find it with the person in the moment? That's the first question. And then the second one is, you know, life is ebbs and flows, day and night, light and dark. So I'm curious to know, do you see these images, are they coming into the light or are they falling into darkness?
Fun. Okay, wait, I think I'm gonna touch the last one first. I'll never tell. So it is a little bit of both. But that question is why I love, to the other question that we had, it's why I love chiaroscuro and that style, because you can't quite tell. And to me, that is like life's ultimate metaphor. It's like something could really suck, but then years down the line, it's like, oh, well, it's a good thing that really sucky thing happened. It's like, so was it really all that bad? You know, that hindsight, that perspective, like all of those shifts add to it. So I don't have a hard answer, because I do think I like to live somewhere in the middle, because that is essentially the question that I'm posing. It's a part of the mystery, it's a part of the metaphor, and it's a part of where I really want the viewer to bring that to themselves, because someone who collects this piece might feel like, oh, and look at this person emerging. And another person who collects the same exact piece could be like, oh, look at this person falling and like surrendering to the shadow. It's like there's room for both, you know, there's not really a right or a wrong. And I like to compose the images in a way that they live on that line, because I think that's life, that's literally life. Okay, your other question. Great process question. I will say, I'm gonna give you percentages. 80% of the time I discover the shapes in studio. There have been times where after seeing what the person looks like, I'm already kind of thinking of something, so I can't help but already start to pre-imagine some things. There's only been a handful of times that I've actually fully mood boarded a session. I've been shooting in this way for so long that that really doesn't happen anymore. So most of it is truly discovery, like on site. And I think to kind of add to your question, you didn't ask this part, but I think it'll help with also understanding. I almost always set up the model in a central part where I can almost like 180 around them, or I have the opportunity to rotate them. I always try to move myself first, because once they move, I'm just like, oh no, it's gone, you know? So, but I'm essentially like dancing. Like after a shoot, I'm like sweating, like it's like it was leg day. So yeah, so that all of that movement is important, because that is how I discover the shapes. That is how I'm sculpting. I'm the one that's moving and discovering. The light and model almost always stay in the same shape, and we'll kind of just stay there for a while until I've kind of exhausted where we're at, and I'm just like, okay, now let's try something else.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
My question is, would you say some of the shapes that you photographed, are they in any correlation to some of the emotional response you're looking to resonate with?
Are any of the shapes, say the last part again?
So the shapes that you produce in studio, do they have are they in any correlation to the emotional response that you're looking to, I would say, seek out of that photograph session, that collection?
I'm leaning towards no. I don't think that I'm thinking about the emotions and the shapes in that way. I think that the overall composition, though, I'm thinking of that. To me, the shapes are almost like a cherry on top. It's like finding the geometry, and like I'm not into math, but I love to find a shape, you know, or to create a shape, and doing that with the light, dark. There's this ratio that you'll see in the images the more that you sit with them. That's kind of a part of the process and how I'm shooting. You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Yes.
So you're really good at showing the human body, especially the black body and the beauty in it. And you mentioned a lot about self-discovery and understanding the light and beauty within oneself with your models that you're photographing. Do you at some point realize that you're maybe learning more about yourself and who you are as a photographer while shooting these models? And if that does happen, how have you realized throughout the years that's impacted the way that you actually portray these models in art?
That's a nice question. Thank you. I do think that I learn a lot about myself through the people that I photograph and the way that I photograph. I also, it's been a minute, but I do have a history in my practice of putting myself in the same shoes as my models. And I think that is another way of learning. So my husband's a comic book artist and he teaches figure drawing. So I have done figure modeling several times before, and that has always been a like, oh wow, this is what it feels like, you know? And I think that informs it too. I think that for me, can't speak for all artists, for me, I think that the strength of my work comes from the lessons that I learned through it, through making it, through sharing it, through talking about it, and being vulnerable enough to explain how I show up in it. Because the work that I create is not separate from me, if that makes sense. It is very much so a part of me, and it's a part of, and it doesn't have to physically be me, if that makes sense, for it to be a part of me. And I think those are the elements where like my creative writing starts to fall into. Hope that answers.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I think we have time for one more question if anybody has one.
Okay, yeah, we'll open it up so then they can ask you questions one-on-one.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.